Hello, everyone. This is the report 28 of the swine disease reporting system. My name is Daniel Linhares with Iowa State.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Trevisan with Iowa State.
And we have a special guest here today, Dr. Emily Byers, joining us. She's a member of the swine disease reporting system advisory group, and of course is with the Prestige Farms in North Carolina. Hi, Emily.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. And so we're gonna move on to the report as usual here, starting with the PRRS page. Giovanni, the take home of this page, as I understand, is that the overall detection of PRRS virus by PCR in May is similar to which was observed in April. It's within the forecasted parameters. And the only kind of thing to note here is that there was a slight increase in detection in win-to market animals, right?
Yeah, that's correct. There was this slight increase in win to market over all the months, where moved from 38% in April to 39% in May. But we did observe a slight increase in the first 2 weeks of May in all age categories, but then that turns to lower down the detection for these age categories.
And then it evened out at the end of the month after those first initial weeks of higher activity, right?
That's correct. That's lowering down.
And you also report here that the RFLP 184 moved from the third to the first in the list of the most frequently detected compared to last year.
Yeah, that's correct. And two things need to be pointed out here. The first is that RFLP 184, there is an association with a new vaccine that did enter in the market in the recent times. But additionally to that, we have the wild type strains that we are detecting more of those in the recent period. So we continue to monitor this RFLP type, and is now the major one detected at ISU VDL.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Byers, any comments on PRRS and PRRS activity?
I was thinking as you were going through this, the increase in the weaner market group makes sense to me. As I look on my calendar, those would be a large group of pigs that would have been weaned late February, March, even April, that could be representing vertical transmission of PRRS into the field. So that makes sense to me.
Okay, and so I think that those are more vertical transmission than virus moving out in the field horizontally.
I'm sure there's both. I'm sure there's both, but the increased vertical transmission during that period likely increases the prevalence of lateral transmission in the grow finish population as well.
Mm-hmm. Also wanted to get your thoughts and perspectives on the European PRRS, and that's because looking at the data here from the VDLs, the European virus in this country is more frequently detected in North Carolina compared to Midwest or other regions. So it's more frequently detected over there. What are your perspectives, feelings about the European virus compared to North American, which are also endemic over there?
That's really interesting. I've been practicing in North Carolina for 8 years now, and European PRRS has been endemic as long as I've been here, and actually predates me in this region. Historically, European PRRS is considered a wimpy PRRS or a baby PRRS, as some people have called it, and we've not given it a lot of credit in terms of pathogenicity here in the US. What's interesting that I've noticed as a practitioner, since the emergence of the 174 family of viruses back in 2013, 2014, we saw here in North Carolina European viruses really start to pick up as well in this area in some some systems and a lot of groups now comment on seeing increased European virus. I really don't know what it means, although I will say since that emergence of the 174 family, European viruses tend to have gotten stronger here. They still are not nearly as pathogenic as your North American strains, but they are certainly more create higher morbidity and higher mortality than we've typically given them credit in our pigs, nursing piglets, and even nursery pigs. Still don't see a lot of problems with that virus in our finisher population, but nursing piglets and nursery aged pigs do tend to be a little more affected by that family of viruses than previously we've given it credit. But why it's different in North Carolina than other places, I really don't know. Certainly something that we could look into in the future. And one other point about them, typically in my experience, I tend to see those virus 174 family circulation. Not always. I can see them occasionally on their own cause problems, but they do typically tend to coincide, either a few or following a 174 circulation event. So what all that means, I really don't know, but that's just my anecdotal thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those certainly good research questions, right, to revisit that assumption that the European virus is, like you said, wimpy or baby purrs compared to North American. I hear you saying, well, they may be, but they're still significantly important in the field, and with or without perhaps further investigate this ecology of European and North American co-infecting, or kind of one piggybacking the other one, right?
Absolutely. Great potential research questions for sure.
All right. So moving on here to the next page of the report, which covers enteric coronaviruses detection by PCR, PED, Delta, and TGE. And the summary here, Giovanni, as I understand, is that the overall detection of those viruses are all within the forecasted levels for this time of the year, right?
Yeah, that's correct. For this period of the year, we see this decrease in detection of this virus historically, and this occurring this year again. And the only age category that had very similar detection of April was adults of farms for PED. All the other age categories did decrease the detection of these agents during May when compared with April.
As expected by the forecasting algorithms, right?
That's correct.
So, Emily, what are your thoughts on those enteric coronaviruses? Your experience? What you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling there?
You know, it's interesting. PED this year, for whatever reason, seems a little different. I've heard some practitioners mention this in the past and not been able to say the same thing, but this year, personally, I've dealt with some PED breaks on farms that seems a little different than normal. Genetically, we've looked at sequences of the spike protein. Genetically, they seem to be very, very similar to our original strains in the past, but something phenotypically looks and feels different. We have, and maybe it's an immunity piece that we don't quite understand, but the herds that I've dealt with this winter and spring that have broken with PED are not naive. Obviously, it is endemic in the area here where I practice. And these herds are taking longer to clean up now than they did as naive herds, which is really strange. All of the tried and true methods, herd closures, whitewashing, bubble depopulation, those things
Mhm.
don't seem to be working as they did in the past, and some of these herds are dragging out much longer. We can't really understand why. So nothing scientific there, just a practitioner's impression that something seems to have changed in the past year or two, whether it's immune status of our herds or the virus itself. I can't quite put my finger on.
Another great research question, right? To revisit immunologic parameters, as well as looking at the whole virus sequence and see if there's any evidence of virus change. If not the virus, like you said, maybe is it immunity or environment or some other environmental factors? Some good research follow-up questions. All right. So moving forward here with the mycoplasma page, mycoplasma hyoneumoniae, and its detection by PCR over time. And Giovanni, again, this page, it's the mycoplasma detection is it's following the forecast, following the forecast model, right? So it's expected to see an increase at this time of the year.
That's correct, and we are starting to see some noise in the data at this period of the year, where some week that goes up and the other comes down. So we are going to continue to watch this agent, how is the detection the next weeks.
All right. Moving on to the swine disease diagnosis report, where it doesn't report PCR detection, it reports disease diagnosis as concluded or assigned by each tissue cases by diagnosticians. And so what this page here reports is the number of disease diagnoses by physiological syndrome, respiratory disease, nervous, and we do run algorithms to detect any changes in the disease diagnosis. Giovanni, what are the highlights for this page here for the disease diagnosis?
Yeah, during the month of April and May, there was a signal for increased diagnosis in nervous occurring during April 26th and May 2nd. And when we look for the agents that are related with the nervous system, there was not one agent that comes out as a major outcome of those weeks and being outside of the expected boundaries. So besides of that, everything is calm for this period of the year. And when we did talk with the advisory, SDRS advisory council about what are the expected issues with the disease, they say that the coronavirus, the human coronavirus issue that we have now during 2020 lead to implement stricter biosecurity practices in the farms, including special limiting the entrance of people that are not essential for the business of the farm, and extra disinfecting of surfaces, and shift the people from farms is kind of staggering. More usage of protective equipment as masks, and very stricted procedures of the supply entering the farms with cleaning and disinfecting those surfaces. They are expecting these changes that were done to decrease the incidence of disease in the farms.
Yeah, so with more restrictions on people movement, and that may lead to less opportunities for pathogen spread, right? Long story short, expectation here of a healthier pigs going forward. Would you agree with that, Emily? What are your perspectives here on the long-term, near or long-term impact on swine health due to the COVID-19 related changes in people, pig flow, and everything that surrounds there? How do you see that impacting in the short term or long term swine health?
Well, sure. I tend to agree that, stricter biosecurity for human disease, well, certainly you would like to think increase our biosecurity and hygiene measures at the farm, which will give us a general expectation of lower disease pressure in the whole herd. Certainly would expect to see that, as others have commented. The one thing I do think about, and it's hard for me to balance between the two, unfortunately, as our industry is suffering in the way that we are, economically, I wonder what people will do if they're unable to get the supplies they need for biosecurity. If they're unable to afford the supplies they need. Some people who were using, a lot of PPE, such as booties or things like that, may not be able to obtain those or even afford them in this economy. So I wonder if things like that will be taken off the table, and if some of those biosecurity measures actually become if we actually go backwards a little bit. I don't know that will happen, but I do wonder and I do worry, depending on how the economy continues in our industry, and just the availability of supplies, how that might impact things. Obviously, availability of disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizers have been have been hit or miss in some areas, so that may impact things a little more than we're thinking. So I don't know. I think that's yet to play out. And then also you've got the other emergency interventions that people may do, which might increase commingling of pigs in some locations, or some things as the supply chain continues to back up, and not be able to, as the packers are less able to run at full capacity, the backups there in the supply chain, it makes you wonder how people will respond to that, and what things they will have to do in an effort to not have to euthanize pigs. So I think it's yet to be told. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we will see less disease pressure, but I think there are also some things that, unfortunately, a lot of producers may be forced into choosing the better of two bad decisions that may impact herds this fall. So I think it's yet to be seen.
Complex situation, right? We will keep monitoring the developments here on a weekly basis, and we'll see how it turns. I'm with you. I like to think optimistically, but we'll keep prepared, right? Keep monitoring and keep eyes open. Shifting gears a little bit, you were one of the first practitioners to share information about PCV3. So that was about a year or more ago. What are your current thoughts on the role of PCV3 in disease?
Oh, wow. Yeah, my thoughts have changed on that. I think back to, I think 2015 was the first case I had. 2014, 2015, I can't remember exactly the year. But going from what little we knew then to the tremendous amount of information and knowledge we have now, I still have learned that we have a lot more to learn about this virus. There are some people who have done really wonderful work, Dr. Bailey Arruda, Dr. Rivera, and others who continue to look at this virus, and we're learning that it certainly can be a pathogen. There are interventions out there that myself and other practitioners have described using that seem to work. We don't know why, but they work. And sometimes in practice, maybe that's all you need to make an impact. The biggest question I always get is, well, how do you know when you find it by PCR if it's real or not? And I think that depends. It's very herd specific, very individualistic, depending on what the expectations, the normal is for those herds, especially at a sow farm level. Anytime you're not meeting goals and meeting production performance of what's expected at that farm, and you can detect PCV3 at really low levels. A lot of people are doing processing fluids and able to find that virus, but you've got to distinguish what's clinically relevant for that farm. And over years, farms that I've watched, you know, I've had some farms that I've detected the virus, 2 years or more before it became clinically relevant for that herd. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is trying to put a baseline on diagnosing infection is certainly easy. Diagnosing disease is what's harder with that virus. And then beyond that, knowing when to intervene. And that's honestly, that becomes part of the practitioner's gut feel, if you will, gut reaction, anecdotal evidence. It's hard to prove with the science we have at our hands, but sometimes you just have to make a call clinically as a veterinarian and go for it. And in the times that I've done that, I've seen improvement. So it's out there, it's real, it's relevant, but it certainly takes a practitioner's workup to determine when and if and how relevant it is.
And so you got to further investigate, right? And beyond, like you said, beyond just a PCR detection, and can't conclude much in terms of it's causing disease just based off a PCR, but gotta work case by case. You certainly have seen then that's the conclusion that this pathogen does have the ability to cause disease and deserves further investigation should you detect it by PCR, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, anything else related to this page or to disease detection in general? Have you seen over there any increased kind of challenge with a particular disease or syndrome?
No, I mean, everything we deal with pretty much mirrors what you've shown. It's pretty spot on. I think I'd say we're right there in the average of the nation.
All right. Well, with that, then that's all about we had to cover here today. We thank you once more. You taking your time to help us with this podcast, and with your help on trying to interpret the findings in the swine disease reporting system. Thank you once again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And that's all about we had for today. So see you all next month for the report 29.
Thank you.
Put it on